Good day, everyone. I am Giovanni F. Clapano, and today we will be tackling all about religion and culture. The relationship between culture and religion is revealed in the motivation and manifestation of cultural expression. If culture expresses how humans experience and understand the world, religion is a fundamental way in which humans experience and understand the world. Religion is likely as important in shaping an individual's persona as gender, class, or ethnicity. In the early treatment of multicultural education, religion was seldom, if ever, addressed as one of the prominent subcultures, influencing a student's perceptions and behaviors. In this topic, we will understand how religion can be an important part of the cultural makeup of an individual. Not to provide a comparative review of various religions, we will briefly examine the larger religious groups in the United States and a few of the smaller ones. Let us first tackle religious composition of schools. The religious pluralism of the school in which one teaches is determined. Immigration and migration patterns result in different ethnic and religious groups settling in different parts of the country. The perspectives of the religious community often influence what parents expect from the school. If the religious values of the parents are incongruous with the objectives of a school, serious challenges for educators are likely. In United States, schools are greatly influenced by religious groups in the community, but in other regions, religion may have little, if any, influence on the nature of the schools. Here are some examples. A rural high school in the South may be composed primarily of students from conservative Protestant backgrounds such as Southern Baptist and the Church of Christ. Some students may be members of United Methodist or other less conservative churches. In such a district, local churches serve as the primary social institution for many of the students. The curriculum and textbooks may be carefully scrutinized by the school board for what it considers objectionable subject matter, such as sex, education, evolution, and alternative lifestyle. Now, let's move on to the First Amendment and the separation of church and state. The First Amendment clearly states that Congress is prohibited from making laws establishing a religion or prohibiting religious worship. This has been consistently interpreted by the courts as affirming the principle of separation of church and state. One of the most valued parts of our Constitution, this provision is also one of the most controversial. Various individuals and groups have sought to interpret this amendment to meet their own needs and interests. Others perceive that religious emphasis is appropriate in the public schools as long as it is congruent with their own religious persuasion. These individuals may be quick to cite the constitutional safeguards for separation of church and state if other groups attempt to infuse their religious dogmas. Therefore, it is essential that humanity have one's religious orientation to determine that religion may strongly influence one's perception of what supposed objectivity, fairness, and legality means. When the Supreme Court removed prayers from the schools, a lot of religious groups have continued to fight to restore prayer in the school through state and federal legislation. Parents have also fought verbally and even physically over what books their children should read and what curriculum should be used in social studies and science classes. Community resistance to cultural pluralism and multicultural education has at times been led by individuals associated with conservative religious groups because cultural pluralism inevitably involves religious diversity. Multicultural education, however, provides a basis for understanding and appreciating diversity and minimizes the problems related to people being different from one another. Religion may be the most problematic for educators. Why? Because if the educator is from a religious background that is different from that prevalent in the community or has a perspective about the rule of religion that differs from that of the community, misunderstanding and conflicts may arise that prevent effective instruction. If an educator does not understand or ignores the rule of religion in the lives of students, it may be difficult to develop appropriate instructional strategies or even retain one's position. That would be all for my report. Thank you for listening.
Good day, everyone. This is Justin Grisel O. Ihalo, and I'm going to discuss to you the religious pluralism of United States. Religious pluralism has fostered the rapid accommodation of many American religious movements toward acceptability and respectability within society. Groups such as Jehovah's Witnesses have maintained their independence. The smaller groups that maintain their distinctiveness have historically been victims of harassment by members of mainstream religious groups. Christian Scientists, Jehovah's Witnesses, Children of God, and the Unification Church are minority groups that have been subjected to such treatment. Conflict among the four major faiths, Protestantism, Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam, has also been intense of different periods in history. Anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, and anti-Catholic sentiments are still perpetuated in some households and institutions. Religion in the United States is constantly changing. While some may assume that the most Asian Americans adhere to Asian-based religions, such as Buddhism, they are often surprised to learn that 42% are Christians. Some African Americans have left traditional African American Protestant churches and joined the ranks of the Black Muslims. Tens of thousands of Latinos have left the Roman Catholic Church for Pentecostal churches, and some college students have embraced Buddhism. Americans tend to identify not only with major groups such as Protestants, Catholics, or Jews, but also with smaller groups or denominations within these major religious groups. For example, former President Jimmy Carter, a Southern Baptist, identifies himself as a born-again Christian. Others may identify themselves as charismatic Catholics. Within each major group is considerable heterogeneity. Most denominations have remained in their traditional regional strongholds, with Catholics in the Northeast, liberal and moderate Protestants in the Northeast and Midwest, and conservative Protestants in the South. Some groups, however, have expanded their base considerably. For example, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, and members of United Church of Christ no longer as concentrated in the Northeast as they once were. Some numerical base shifts have been made into the Sun Belt, primarily the southern and southwestern regions. While the United States has remained primarily a Christian nation with strong Protestant influence, the country has seen slow but steady changes in the past few decades. North America is exceptional in its changing religious landscape. Brazil is an example of another country in another continent where significant religious changes have taken place in recent years. As contemporary Christianity evolves in U.S. society, there is an apparent dichotomy between the conservative Christian community and the liberal moderate Christians and non-Christians. Some conservatives choose to homeschool their children to shelter them from what they view as objectionable elements in society. They may tend to avoid those who do not share their conservative values. These findings have implications for both educators and students. Educators who share conservative values, even if in keeping with majority community values, are professionally obligated to respect the religious values of all of their students, even when they have person- personal concerns regarding their students' religious or spiritual life. Protestants in the United States no longer constitute the dominant numerical majority as in previous decades but continue to influence society and institutions. Conservative Protestants generally believed that the Bible is inerrant, that the supernatural is distinct from the natural, that salvation is essential, and that Jesus will return in bodily form during the second coming. They emphasize personal morality rather than social ethics. Southern Baptists are the largest group in the category. Protestants have a long history of involvement in both public and private educational programs. Differences in beliefs among Protestants have resulted in many court cases to determine what can or cannot be taught to or asked of students in the public schools. Although the doctrine and pattern of worship within the Catholic Church are uniform, individual parishes differ to some extent according to the race, ethnic background, and social class of their members. Today, the Catholic Church in the United States is the wealthiest national church in the Roman Catholic world and contributes approximately half of its income to the church in Rome. In addition to its phenomenal numerical growth, the Roman Catholic Church in the United States has developed the largest private educational system in the world. In many communities, Catholic parochial schools offer quality educational options to both Catholic and non-Catholic students at a lower cost than most other private institutions. With thousands of elementary and secondary schools from Vermont to Hawaii and such internationally recognized universities as Notre Dame, Creighton, and Loyola, Roman Catholic schools and universities have educated millions of Americans and greatly influenced the culture of the country. Judaism is one of the oldest religions known to humanity and also provides the historical roots of both Catholicism and Protestantism. Primarily as a result of Jews from many countries amalgamating under the identification of Jewish American, Judaism has become one of the 4 decades American schools have observed the Christian holiday of Christmas. In the past 30 or 40 years, educators have become increasingly sensitive to the diversity of the students in their schools. Many schools, in the spirit of inclusiveness and sensitivity, now refer to the holiday vacation period as the December school recess and December school parties as holiday parties. Anti-Semitism. Here is the Quran's basic theme is the relationship between God and His creatures. It provides guidelines for a society that is just, with proper human conduct, and an economic system that is equitable. Muslims believe that Islam began with Adam and continued through the line of prophets, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Believers are of two major groups: Sunni Muslims, who comprise 85% of Islam, believe that the rightful leadership began with Abu Bakr and that the succession has passed to caliphs, or political leaders. Shi'i or Shiite Muslims are a smaller but highly visible group. Shiite Muslims believe that Muhammad intended the succession of leadership to pass through the bloodline of his cousin and son-in-law. The majority of Muslim students in the United States and Canada attend public schools. The September 11, 2001 attacks and the more recent hostilities in the Middle East have increased concerns of some Muslim students in U.S. schools about their personal safety and concerns that the wearing of traditional attire, example, head coverings for women, could draw unfavorable attention to them. Educators need to remember that only a very small minority of Muslims are militants and that the vast majority living in the United States want to be an integral part of American society. Culturally responsive teaching requires educators to examine their own attitudes and beliefs before they attempt to educate their students. All educators should be committed to the creation of a school environment that is emotionally and physically safe for all students. In the United States, about 4,000 or 40,000 students attend 240 to 250 private Islamic schools. These schools are designed to provide full-time educational programs to help children grow into productive citizens in society and productive citizens in the hereafter. As a group, U.S. Muslims tend to be reasonably well educated. 11% indicate that they have gone through graduate study, another 15% are college graduates, and an additional 19% have had some college. 59% were working part or full. Buddhism is one of the world's major religions, with nearly 500,000,000 adherents worldwide. Immigration of Asians from countries such as China, Taiwan, Korea, Thailand, Japan, and Tibet brings thousands of additional Buddhists into the United States and continually changes the religious demographics of the country. In the 20-year period between 1992 and 2012, over 1 million Buddhist immigrants entered the United States. With Buddhists coming from so many regions of the world, there are variable different forms of Buddhist practice. Buddhist schools of thought or belief are united in a twofold orientation toward existence: a fundamental negative attitude toward life and a pessimistic approach to ordinary existence. Buddhists view existence itself as the problem with life. Buddhism teaches that the path to enlightenment is neither through a life of luxury nor through self-deprivation, but through the middle way, away from the extremes. Salvation and enlightenment occurs when one realizes his or her place of non-self in the world. With enlightenment comes the state of nirvana, meaning a person's individual desires and suffering go away. Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese individuals are often influenced by Confucian philosophy, which guides daily behaviors in much the same way that a religious does. Thus, some individuals may be Buddhist or Christian or some other religion with a strong philosophical overlay of Confucianism. Hinduism is the major religion of India and the world's third largest religion after Christianity and Islam. There are approximately 1 billion adherents in the world, representing 15% of the world's population. The number of Hindus in the United States is estimated to be around 1.8 million, or an estimated of 6% of the U.S. population. Generally regarded as the world's oldest organized religion, it differs from Christianity and other Western religions in that it does not have a single founder. Hinduism believes that the law of karma states that every action taken by an individual influences how he or she will be reincarnated. Those who live a good life will be reincarnated into higher state. Those who do evil will be reincarnated in lower forms, such as a worm. Reincarnation continues until a person reaches spiritual perfection. The soul then enters a new level of existence, referred to as moksha, from which it never returns. Many religions are particularistic in that members believe that their own religion is uniquely true and legitimate, and all others are invalid. Other religious groups accept the validity of distinct religions that have grown out of different historical experiences. The United States can be considered a religious country. 78% of Americans say that religion is very fairly important to them. Religion is clearly an important aspect of the lives of many people, although it may have little impact on the lives of some. It influences the way many individuals think, perceive, and behave. Brazil, Japan, the United States, Italy, South Africa, and the United Kingdom are among the nations with the least restriction on religious expression. However, individuals in other countries are not as fortunate. While religious differences often cause frustration and acrimony in school and society, those who live in the countries such as the United States often take freedom of religious expression for granted. It is this freedom that allows citizens to disagree. Students should be taught that many others in the world do not enjoy our religious liberties and that we ourselves need to be vigilant to ensure that unconstitutional restrictions and rulings are not imposed on our citizenry. Religious groups addressed in the text. The United States and other countries, such as neighboring Canada, are unique in the religious diversity of the people. Religion is particularly important to those who adhere to a religious faith.
My assigned topic is all about interaction of religion with gender, gay and lesbian issues and races. So what is religion? Religion can significantly influence one's perception, attitudes, and values. In some respects, religion can be much like other cultures. Religion absorbs the values of that religious cultures and often integrates it into his or her personal value system. Religion influences attitudes towards issues such as gender, homosexuality, and race. Religion and gender. In an era of gender equality, in the general society of the United States, issues of gender equality are often raised in religious institutions. In many of the more conservative religious bodies, the role of women is clearly defined and limited. So, women's roles really recognize Catholic religion, no female priest, Mormons unable to obtain priesthood, church views supported by Bible, women supposed to relinquish themselves to their husbands. Some groups, more liberal in interpretations, believe Adam and Eve were given equal domain. Religious expectations can carry over into life. No control in religion, no control at home. In supporting the limitations of female leadership and submission of wives, some drew attention to the fact that Jesus' disciples did not include women. So, here are those biblical verses. Example, Corinthians 14, verse 34 to 35, admonish women to submit themselves to their husbands and indicate that the husband is the head of the wife. Also, some believe that God gave man through Adam. Genesis 1 verse 26 to 27, dominion over Eve and therefore man dominance over women. However, others argue that such an interpretation is incorrect and that both Adam and Eve, man and women, were given dominion over every other living thing. There are other biblical examples of women who were leaders or prophets. Example, Deborah, see Judges 45. The participation of women in leadership roles in both Protestantism and Judaism is a function of where the particular denomination falls on the liberal to conservative continuum. So, the liberal Protestants, example, the Episcopalians, ordained women as priests. Likewise, the Reformed Jewish movement has ordained women as rabbis since 1972. Thus, the conservative Jewish seminaries began ordaining women as rabbis in 1985, but the Orthodox Jewish movement has not embraced this policy. In addition to defining the parameters of religious participation of males and females, religion may also be used to prescribe male and female roles outside the religious context. Such prescriptions may be done either directly or indirectly. In other instances, the pronouncements may be more direct. Religious writings of great importance, such as the Bible, are continuously interpreted, studied, and analyzed. That's why it is important for educators to be aware that many of society's attitudes towards gender equality or inequality may be rooted in religious practice. Religion and gay and lesbian issues. Gay and lesbian issues have become among the most controversial dilemmas facing religious institutions today. Attacks on gay and lesbian in the religious context are often justified through biblical passages regarding the same-sex relationships are not clear and may be subject to influence by misguided beliefs. So, views based on interpretation of religious material, Bible is not clear, Bible is perfectly clear, can result in prejudice, discrimination, or attacks. Conservative Christians, liberals, in conservative Christians, choice, sin, AIDS is punishment. While in liberals, born homosexual, only choice is to practice acceptance. Views of religious leaders impact views of members. Goal: respect all members of society regardless of differences. In 2008, California's Proposition 8, a voter initiative, banned gay marriage. It was strongly supported by the Roman Catholic, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Mormon, evangelical Christian groups, Orthodox Jewish, Eastern Orthodox, and other religious groups. In 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court left in place a lower court's decision that Prop 8's ban is unconstitutional and also struck down key portions of the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA. Episcopalians have elevated both gay, and lesbian as bishops. These actions have severely strained relations between the parent Anglican Church and the American Episcopal Church and have resulted to schism in some Episcopal congregations over what they consider excessively liberal practices. In Graham, 2014, suggested that the evangelical community is a major stronghold of anti-gay sentiment and likely one of the key political groups in the fight against same-sex marriage. In contrast, religious views toward LGBT issues have considerable implications for the educational setting. Educators have a right to their personal views toward homosexuality. They cannot allow students to harass or bully one another. And they cannot allow students to voice their personal opinions and attack other students verbally or otherwise in the classroom or on school grounds.